Okay, so I may get to that, but the reason I'm pushing back on this point is because I think this might be the argument that's the most counterintuitive. Because I think if you talk to most people and you ask them, why was there a woke revolution? They would say, because intelligent elites foisted it upon the population. And what they would point to is the informational institutions, namely academia and the media. And they would say those are the two most woke institutions. They are replete with intelligent, verbally gifted people who concoct this pernicious ideology and then spread it. And you're saying, wait a second, no, actually, cognitive elite are overwhelmingly, or at least maybe not overwhelmingly, but majority anti woke in that they're actually liberals, either classical liberals or left leaning liberals. And that to me is the important, I think
Yeah,
that's the complicated claim to tease apart here because
yeah.
I'm persuaded by some of your arguments, but then I keep returning to if what you're saying is true, why is it that the institutions that are dominated by intelligent people, especially verbally gifted people, are overwhelmingly woke?
Yeah, so I have a few more points that I was going to make in response, aside from the two I made already, which were that academia and journalism aren't representative, and that
Hmm.
within those institutions the correlation is null or even reversed.
Right.
So another point is that institutions don't necessarily reflect the views of their smartest members. It's particularly true where there's some democratic element in the decision making. I mean, certainly within, for example, the Democratic Party, the views of the smartest Democrats are not likely to be the ones that are reflected in the overall policy program. Same is true for the
Hmm.
Republicans, of course.
Hmm.
Um, Secondly, in terms of my additional points, there's the fact that highly intelligent white liberals, traditional left liberals, are extremely sensitive to accusations of bigotry and racism, and so they find it incredibly difficult to speak up and counteract the passionate woke activists in their midst who are often non-white, not always. They don't want to be accused of racism, which is in the early years of wokeness what anyone challenging wokeness was accused of. That's why in my reading of things, the backlash was somewhat delayed. It took a few years for enough people to overcome the threat of nasty accusations and speak out against wokeness. Which brings me to the third additional point, which is that there was a delayed backlash, and now we're seeing some we're seeing some retrenchment in wokeness, I would argue. But perhaps we can leave
Hmm.
that discussion to the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So,
anyway, I think there's but what I also wanted to say in regard to your very reasonable criticism regarding what I said about cognitive elites, wokeness, and liberalism is some version of Kovnas's thesis probably could be salvaged um, if you were to modify it by saying that cognitive elites who are disproportionately represented in creative or influential sectors, or cognitive elites who are really passionate about politics,
mhm.
are 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 disproportionately drawn to some of the views he mentions. But even then, I mean, it's hard to find data to support that argument. I mean, in my article I cite some data from the General Social Survey, which is a very commonly used nationally representative survey of the U.S. population, which has this fairly decent short intelligence test, the word sound vocabulary test. And if
Mhm.
you take people in the top 5% of that test, it's basically people who get 10 words out of 10 correct. It's difficult to find evidence that they lean towards wokeness. They're overwhelmingly in favor of allowing a racist, someone who's described in the question as a racist, to speak in their community, I think is how it's phrased. and they're also opposed to affirmative action by about 2-1, although they're slightly less opposed than are less intelligent whites. So perhaps there's a tendency for highly intelligent whites who have a particular interest in shaping or changing society.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps there's a tendency for those whites to embrace wokeness, but cognitive elites in general don't seem to have embraced it.